we hardly need a wrathful God to wipe us out. We stand on the brink of a self-imposed apocalypse. If we continue our traditional way of handling matters, we may well end up destroying each other that way. But it sounds like Harry Potter's group may have a way to help avoid that. My book is called Compassion or Apocalypse.
Yeah.
Compassion being the counterbalance and what is so necessary, because we are learning to have compassion and to see our enemies as human beings, not as just pure embodiment of evil. We are learning to look at our scapegoats as human beings, not as just the pure embodiments of evil. We are learning to have more compassion. And unless we really learn that and we get away from the kinds of scapegoating and the demonizing of the other that has been the human way for millennia, and the way in which we've bonded, then we could have our own apocalypse, So we need to discover a compassion that will liberate us from those ancient habits.
This is Potter Watch, a podcast that brings out the Harry Potter fan in all of us. This is a special episode where we'll talk to a fan who has never read the Harry Potter series. That's right, James Warren is a professional magician, author, and all-around prophetic guy who has encountered themes in Western literature and philosophy that abound in Harry Potter and make him a fan even though he hasn't read the books. He's been looking for an excuse to read the series and has agreed to come back on the show after doing so to confirm or deny how universal J.K. Rowling's fantasy world is and how relevant it is to the challenges the world faces today. I can't wait. Even before the episode aired, Jim had read book 1 and was deep into number 2. So let's take a listen to his walk through the Pensieve and into the roots of human desire, social bonding, and the forces behind good and evil. Okay, Jim, are you ready to go inside the Pensieve?
I am.
All right, here we go. So I'd like to introduce James Warren from Ithaca, New York. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you.
Yeah, how you doing tonight?
It has been a dark, rainy, stormy, thunderous night.
The windows were shaking and everything.
Windows were shaking. How appropriate.
Yeah. As I understand it, you haven't read any of the Harry Potter books. Is that true?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Guilty as charged.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a special episode because I thought of having you on the show for a number of reasons that we'll get into. And I had the idea, knowing you, knowing some of your work, and knowing the Harry Potter stories, I found it hard to believe that you hadn't read any of the Harry Potter books yet.
Yeah.
I assumed you had. And I just know that you're going to be a huge fan. And after inviting you to be on the show, you revealed that you actually have been looking for an excuse to read them.
Right. I have.
Okay. So, for all those listeners out there, what we're planning on doing here is inviting you back in the future after you've read Harry Potter.
Right.
And getting your take on the books after having done this episode. And perhaps revisiting some of the concepts that'll come up tonight.
Sounds good. Now I have an excuse to go read them.
Yeah. Awesome. So why did I think you'd be such a good fit for the podcast, and why do I know that you're going to be a huge Harry Potter fan after you read them? The first reason is I understand that you're a magician.
Yes.
And you do real magic.
Well, I don't know if your listeners will know what that means.
You're a real
professional-
magician.
I'm a professional sleight of hand magician.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Is there any other kind of magician?
Well, yes, there are people out there who claim to and believe that they are practicing genuine magic, i.e., performing rituals, calling on spirits and or demons or other kinds of supernatural entities to make things happen in the world.
Yeah.
That's not my shtick.
Yeah.
Mine is strictly for entertainment and is based on sleight of hand
Yeah.
and illusion.
The other reason I was excited about having you on the show was I know that you appreciate how stories and how literature works in our lives and influences who we are as people. And you've, I understand it, written a book
Yes.
called Compassion or Apocalypse.
Compassion or Apocalypse,
Yeah.
a comprehensible guide to the thought of Rene Girard.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it sounds like Rene Girard, the philosopher,
Yes.
contemporary philosopher, has written has a canon of literature that has particularly influenced and inspired you
Yes.
in your everyday life.
Yeah. Girard, who, by the way, just died
Oh.
a couple months ago, I think.
Oh my gosh.
3-4 months ago, he was, I believe, 91. Spent most of his career at Stanford. French department. Actually, he's French, but he lived in America for much of his life. And call him a philosopher, yes, but he was many things, really.
Okay.
Anthropologist, psychologist, philosopher. But he developed a theory which is known as the mimetic theory. And the first book that garnered international attention for Girard, especially in Europe when it first came out, was called Deceit, Desire, and the Novel. Yes, he's also a literary critic.
Okay.
And it's quite well known in literary critical academic circles. He has a whole book on Shakespeare called The Theater of Envy. But Deceit, Desire, and a Novel was the first one, and that developed the idea of mimesis.
Okay.
And what mimesis means and what it has to do with interpersonal relationships. And Girard claims to have discovered it by reading the great novelists of the Western canon. We're talking people like Dostoevsky, Shakespeare, Proust, Flaubert, who else? Stendhal. Girard discovered it there, wrote a novel about it, and so that was the beginning. And we can talk about mimesis, a psychological point of view, from the point of view of personal relationships,
Okay.
which is what that book of Girard's, Deceit, Desire, and a Novel, was primarily about. Then there's a whole other level. After he wrote that book, then he started getting more and more into anthropology, reading all the classics of anthropology, Durkheim, Levi-Strauss, and so on. And then he comes up with a take on that where the idea of mimesis is now expanded to apply to group behavior, to levels of sociology, and we begin to address issues like how did human beings form communities? How do communities survive and are maintained? And we talk, and religion plays a huge role in that. And how did religion come into being? And there are many issues at that, if you will, macro level that he then addresses in subsequent books.
Okay. So the
particularly-
personal and the social, or the
You're
personal
right.
and political.
Right, and the main one for the macro level, if you will, the anthropological or sociological level, is called the Violence and the Sacred.
Mm.
And that book really got a name for Girard when that was published.
Mm-hmm.
That book is talking about ancient religion and the meaning of the sacred and its relationship with violence.
Okay, so let's stop right here for a
Yes,
moment. If we can.
that's a good place.
Yeah. So take us back then to this. There must be something very interesting about this concept, mimesis.
Yeah, yes, well, honestly, it was for Girard, it was also the discovery of mimesis that he made reading these novels was also connected with his own personal experience as well, where he discovered this process within himself as a result of a relationship that he had with a woman he was in love with and so on, as I recall. I've had several really major influences on my life that have come through literature of one sort or another.
Yeah.
Girard is the latest one.
Okay.
And that goes back to right after 9/11
Okay.
happened, actually, is when I discovered Girard. And I discovered it because a friend of mine who's a professor had been reading Girard and trying to talk to his students about it, and his students were arguing it with him and not really not getting it and not believing it and so on. And then 9/11 happened, and it turns out that 9/11, the response in this country to 9/11 was in some ways very illustrative of some of the primary concepts Girard is talking about, and suddenly all of the students in his class go, "Oh,
Ears perked up.
oh me, well,
Yeah.
maybe we need to think about this a little bit more." And he related that to me, and I said, "Well, okay, I guess I got to read this guy." So I started reading him. I got hooked right away. I related to it very, very deeply. On a personal level, I think the concept of mimesis. Would you like me to explain what that is and how that was valuable to me?
Yeah.
And I'll have to rely on you to tie this into Harry Potter, since, as you said, I haven't read
Yeah.
the Harry Potter books. But mimesis means imitation.
Okay.
And the reason Girard uses the word mimesis instead of imitation is not just to be fancy, but in order to highlight for us the fact that he's talking about something that runs deeper than mere surface imitation. Girard's fundamental insight is that not only do we copy or imitate each other at superficial external levels, and not only do we copy each other at deeper levels, such as attitudes. We pick up attitudes from each other. My son is in middle school. He's learning all kinds of attitudes, and they are all coming through the process of imitation or copying, right? That's all included within the concept of mimesis, but mimesis goes deeper yet.
Okay.
And this is the seminal insight for Girard, is that we copy each other's desires. We imitate the desire of the other. And that this is how we learn, as human beings, what is valuable and worthwhile. We learn it from models. People we look to, people we see desiring certain things. My mom desires this, my dad desires this, my friend desires that. Sometimes these desires could be for particular objects. Sometimes these desires could be for a certain type of behavior or ethic, or a desire to believe a certain thing. Whatever it is desire. And when we see the other desiring, okay, it can, now this is not a mechanical process that works all the time.
Okay.
But in the right moment and situation, it will ring a bell within us. There will be, how you have a tuning fork and you bong, and then you bring another tuning fork close to it that you haven't tapped.
Yes.
And now that tuning fork, if it's the same harmonic, will start to vibrate the same way. Mimesis is very much like that. So
like a synchrony?
like a synchrony. So
Yeah.
if you desire something and you're really into it and you're really excited
Yeah.
about it, that mood
Yeah. Hey,
is contagious.
I gotta go get Gerard's books.
Well, because I'm so excited about
Yeah.
Girard, and
Yeah.
I obviously desire Girard. Girard looks like something valuable, something desirable,
Right.
and the more excited I get about it, sometimes you actually have to work hard to resist
Sure.
the excitement that a person can show. But it doesn't always happen that obviously.
Right.
You know, it can happen very, very, very subtly. You know, and again, it's not a mechanical process. But if you put some kids in a room, little children, and you might have a couple of kids in a room, and one kid is off here playing, and another kid's off here playing, and in the middle of the room or this side of the room, there's some toy that nobody's touched yet.
Right.
And the one little kid goes and gets that toy, and the other little kid notices. All of a sudden, the other kid wants that toy.
Sure. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Does that happen every time? No.
Right.
Right? Why doesn't it happen every time? Because, well, there could be lots of reasons. Maybe that kid already has that toy at home, so that kid's bored with that toy. Right? There could be. Maybe that kid is just so engrossed with what he's doing right now that it barely skirts his consciousness.
So it's not his radar.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
not really come into his radar.
Mm-hmm.
But there are those moments when it comes right into the radar,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not that toy in and of itself is desirable.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like there's something inherent within
Mm-hmm.
that toy that really makes it more desirable than anything else.
Right.
But it looks desirable to me because the other kid wants it.
Yeah.
And I completely agree with Girard. I mean, if Dostoevsky, Shakespeare, their novels are full, and the plays are full of exactly this dynamic
that.
all the time. You have a positive mimesis going on with Harry Potter, which Girard talks about. Positive mimesis. Negative mimesis is the mimesis that leads to rivalry, envy, and violence. And this is the I don't know what to say, the ironic tragedy, if you will, or of our mimetic nature. That human beings are primarily mimetic creatures. It is to our mimetic ability that we owe our identity as human selves. As we come into the world with nothing, tabula rasas, if you will, of course we have genetics, and we're wired certain temperaments and all of that stuff. But in terms of the culture, knowing what's important, what are we going to value,
Right.
what's desirable, what do I want, what direction am I going to move
Where do we
in?
focus our attention?
Where am I going to focus my attention? You know, this is picked up mimetically in one way or another as we grow.
Meaning we understand what to put our attention on, or what to invest in through copying each other.
Through
through
copying.
observing others. And
That's
then, And then,
Right,
like a mime,
right.
copying it.
And again, there may be many reasons why I, in my developmental process, copied this person,
Yeah.
and you wouldn't have.
Right.
You had other models. You know,
Sure.
we have our own way that we find our way, but we're all essentially doing the same thing. We're copying models, and we're copying at the most fundamental level. We're copying what we see, or at least what we believe they desire.
And this is not inherently a problem.
Well, that was where I was leading.
The positive
This is
and
not
negative.
inherently a problem. That's right. But there is a double-edged sword about it. We're, on the one hand, the positive side is it's how we become a self. We can't do otherwise. We have to have mimesis to become human selves. But on the other hand, it is the mimetic nature that leads us into rivalry and eventually violence. Why? Because the person we choose as a model,
Okay.
all right, we have many models, okay, but any one of those models may also become our enemy, our rival, or as Gerard would term it, an obstacle to us. How would that work?
Yeah.
This may well relate to Harry Potter, because I imagine you have masters and apprentices.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And if you take a classic relationship between a master and an apprentice, the master is the model, right?
Okay, yeah.
The apprentice is the student who admires the model, who has come to this master saying, I would like to work with you and be your apprentice. You know, I just flashed on Donald Trump's show, The Apprentice, right?
Okay.
Very timely for where we're going through right now. And so the student wants to model the master. Well, this relationship works fine as long as the student remains lower than the master. Okay, what happens as the student begins to gain more and more facility, more and more skill, to eventually come to the point where the student matches the master's level, and then even more starts to produce, starts to put product out there into the world that starts to garner applause, accolades, even money for the student, and perhaps even more cuts into the the limelight that the master was once getting. Your model doesn't have to be alive either, by the way. It can be a fictional character. Don Quixote, his model was Amadis of Gaul, the great knight errant, and that Don Quixote read about in the great romance novels, right, of the Middle Ages, with all the knights and so on. And he was so carried away by that, you know, it drove him crazy.
So the awareness of a desire can come from person at face-to-face modeling or our imagination.
Absolutely.
Another interesting way that literature can influence our daily lives.
Exactly. Major. That's what Madame Bovary, the novel. There you go. That's what she was into. She was enamored with all of the literatures and showing that she read, and took flights in her imagination. You know, wanting and desiring the things that the characters she read about wanted and desired.
And in the positive strain, we come to work out a way with the model of both being able to manifest the desire.
That's great.
We make room for each other.
Right.
You know, so my guitar teacher and I do a show together.
Yep.
Or I open for him and he opens for me.
Right.
Something like that.
I see this negotiation.
Or I say, look, I'm only going to play in these venues. I'm going to stay away from your venues. And
absolutely. I see this negotiation going on all the time in the magic world among magicians.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Who developed the trick first? Do I have permission to? I need to explain part of your trick in order to explain and market my trick. Do I have your permission to do that? Blah blah blah. There's all the, you know, who had this gig first? I mean, it's the same thing. It's
it's like in science,
right?
You know, making sure we cite those who came before us.
Right.
Right. Okay, and in the negative strain, in the process of imitation, we develop a desire. We find a model. And we start to copy them. But somewhere along the line, that the model becomes an obstacle.
Yeah, it usually does. And sometimes people can negotiate that.
Got it.
You know, and
so there's always an obstacle, but how we negotiate it, whether or not we find a way for all of us
exactly
to win out, or
whether we're just going to clobber heads.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Okay, Jim, are you ready to go to Voldemort's corner?
Oh, I don't know. That sounds scary to me.
I'll be right.
I guess.
I'll be right here with you.
Okay.
All right. Here we go.
Now, here's an interesting twist, and it relates to what you told me about Voldemort.
Yeah.
Sometimes it happens that our first encounter is with an obstacle.
Mm.
Not a model as such,
Mm-hmm.
but an obstacle, pure and simple.
Mm.
And because we encounter this person, experience this person as an obstacle,
Mm-hmm.
we make that person a model.
Mm-hmm.
We make them a model precisely because we've experienced that person as an obstacle.
Mm-hmm.
So let me give you an example of what that means, because it sounds weird.
Mm-hmm.
The Devil Wears Prada,
Okay.
the movie.
Okay. Yeah.
Have you seen that?
I haven't.
Yeah, okay. Wonderful
I've
movie.
heard about it.
Totally Girardian movie from start to finish.
Okay.
If anybody out there knows Rene Girard's work, watch The Devil Wears Prada. But you got a big fashion magazine named Runway,
Okay.
and it's run by Meryl Streep, who plays Miranda, a woman named Miranda. She's the CEO.
Yeah.
And let's see, the word that comes to my mind I probably can't use, I don't know, in this podcast to
It's a
describe
clean-
her.
It is a clean podcast.
Yeah, okay. But she's not pleasant.
Okay.
You know, she is the worst imaginable boss you could ever want to have. You know, she is short with everybody and domineering and as cold as a Arctic winter. And the movie opens with a montage showing you several different young women getting themselves out of bed, getting ready, putting on their makeup, putting on their clothing and stuff, and going down. They live in New York. They're going down. They call their taxis, and you wonder, where are they all gone?
Yeah.
You know, and so they all seem to be the same. You know, they all seem to have either a husband or a lover in bed with them that they get up. You know, while he's still sleeping, they get up early, right? And you're doing. You wonder, where are they all gone? Are they all gone to the same place? It turns out they are. They're all going to Runway Magazine because they all work there,
Right.
except for Anne Hathaway, who is actually going there the same morning to seek a job interview to be Miranda's assistant. And the point I want to make is that scene then leads you go into the Runway Magazine, and this one young lady gets word on her cell phone that Miranda has arrived early. She sends out a general alert throughout the magazine, and there's like this, oh my God, three minute montage, which is fabulous, where you see everybody scurrying like mice, running this way and that. Oh my God, they weren't expecting her to in this early, so everything has to be arranged and organized. You know, that the women kick off their casual shoes and put on their high heels. You know, somebody runs into her office and arranges all the magazines, and they bring her bottle of Perrier in her glass. You know, and all this stuff is happening in all the departments as she's getting into the elevator and coming up, and the tension's building and building and building. Well, Miranda is the classic obstacle. The point is that it is precisely because she is so domineering, so powerful, so cold, so untouchable, so knowledgeable with knowledge that nobody else has. That's why she's the CEO of Runway. She knows the history of fashion. She has all this information in her head. Her judgment about fashion is supposed to be the ultimate of the ultimate, right? Nobody can touch Miranda at that level. She's like a sacred force or power. And it's precisely because she has that and is unkind to people that they're attracted. She's almost not human. What has she got going for her? I want a piece of that.
Right. Like it.
That's exactly right. And so all of those people that work there, and when Anne Hathaway shows up for that job interview, she's naive. See, she's not into this. In fact, she's set up at the beginning of the movie as somebody who disses fashion, thinks it's a bunch of hoke and malarkey, right? She's just a cute college co-ed type girl, you know. She's not in this high fashion
So
stuff.
I want to be like somebody that nobody can be like.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. And Anne Hathaway eventually falls for that. You know, eventually she gets the job, and she tries to resist and maintain her attitude of, this is a bunch of meaningless stuff. But nope, she cannot herself resist the attraction of Miranda's power, and she ends up losing her genuine relationship with a guy she really loves as a result of it. So the movie is about what she has to go through to achieve redemption from that process. So we sometimes will encounter an obstacle, and precisely because it blocks our path, we think that this has a power we don't have. We feel small in its presence. We feel insignificant in its presence. We feel ignorant in the presence of its knowledge. We think this thing has, or this person has, access to secrets that I don't have. Boy, is that big in magic. And it's withholding from us, and that's big in the magic world too. Magicians withhold secrets from each other because the more you withhold something, the more desirable it looks to others, right? Yes. So that becomes an obstacle. If I am going to achieve this, right, this is what stands in my way. But precisely because it does stand in my way, I want to have what it has. I want to be it. I want to be that. So what happens? Miranda becomes the model. Yeah, and everybody at Runway dresses like Miranda. Of course. Everybody at Runway acts like Miranda. You know, the secretary that's closest to her is almost as cold as she is.
Meanwhile, she loses all of her true connections.
Miranda has no connections. Yeah. No, in fact, there's a scene in the movie where I think, as I recall, where she's in tears, and I believe it's because her husband's left her or something like that. Yeah, and you're right. And nobody at Runway, she certainly can't trust any of them. You know, ultimately, they want to be Miranda, as you said. So, this is Girard's technical term for this. All of those people would be in a state that Girard calls scandal. They are scandalized people. Now, the term scandal, don't think of it as we normally think of, oh, this politician was caught in bed with such and such, therefore, and this is a big scandal. Right. It does relate to that in a little bit of a way, which I won't bother getting into. Okay. But Girard is using the term scandal in a particularly technical way to designate the emotional bind that you find yourself in when you are attracted to an obstacle that is essentially abusing you or limiting you somehow, right? Lording it over you, dominating you. You don't feel good about yourself in your relation with this thing, and yet you want to be this. You're attracted to it. Yeah. You know, so you feel this push-pull within your own heart toward this obstacle, but you can't get out of it. Yeah, that is the power that Voldemort, without reading novels, would seem to have. He has the power to scandalize, in Girardian terms. He has the power to scandalize others, and he scandalizes them by being the cruel and powerful guy that he is. Yeah. So
his followers are called Death Eaters. That won't spoil too much, but they are, speaking of the mimesis, you know, they all, you know, coming down to their attire, they all wear black robes, indistinguishable from each other. That model after
they all have their runway fashion.
Fashion exactly.
Version.
Yeah, and these masks they wear that might be somewhat distinct, but ultimately, are pretty uniform. The little Voldemorts, Voldemort wannabes.
Now, I would imagine that if you've got that, then you must also have, because this is another major aspect of Girardian thought, Voldemort and his hordes must also have a scapegoat or scapegoats.
Those would be what are called the Muggle-born students at Hogwarts. These are students at Hogwarts that are invited to train to be wizards that don't come from wizarding families.
Oh, okay.
They come from our world.
And Harry
So
Potter
we would
was
be-
one.
we
Harry
would be
Potter
called
was one of
muggles.
those. Yes.
Harry's parents were both wizarding.
Oh, I see.
parents.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Muggles. So what is Voldemort's attitude toward Muggles, or what are they? What is he?
They're not pure bloods.
Okay.
They're not pure blood wizards.
This is another major aspect of Girard's thinking, is that, you see, if we've already talked about the problems that our mimetic nature creates for us, that it's the way we work, but it does bring us into rivalry with others, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we focus on the same desires, but there ain't enough of it to go around,
Right.
and therefore we become rivals with each other. Well, the question then becomes, knowing how intense human desire is and can be, and how passionate we can be, how is it that human beings have been able, historically, I mean going way, way back in evolution, way back to the primal herds of hominids, how is it that we were able to establish and maintain cultures and communities and cultures? And Girard believes that the way we did that is by focusing on scapegoats. And you see this happen. Everybody that's listening to this podcast, I'm sure, knows exactly what we're talking about. When I say, because we've all done this, and we've all seen it being done, whether it's school or in the workplace. 2 or more people gather together, and they talk about somebody else, right? Talking about somebody else behind their back. Whether their complaints about that person are legitimate or not is not the point. The point is that by the time we're done that conversation, cutting so-and-so down to size, we feel really good about each other. Those of us involved in that conversation, we formed a little bond here. You know,
Yeah.
there is a real way in which human beings bond with each other at the expense of a scapegoat who may or may not be genuinely guilty, but that's not the point. The point is we need scapegoats. We need these scapegoats in order to maintain our relationships with each other, so that we don't end up basically destroying each other or the group falling apart. So when you said that Veldemir has this scandalized group of followers that dress like him and imitate him, that tells me right away that he is maintaining that power over them by finding some form of scapegoats that he can bind his group together over against that scapegoat other.
Frustrations of a young man. Oh yeah. Frustrations of a young man.
Voldemir also imitates his own followers, because as they admire him, it's like him seeing his own reflection in a pool, and he likes what he sees, and it's like he's copying himself. But at any moment, groups that are built like that can begin attacking each other. I mean, really, it's built on envy. And it doesn't take much for that unity to fall apart. If one person decides the other person's got a little bit more than I do, or whatever, you know, the old stab in the back or whatever can be waiting. And so people have so much envy and hostility that it's very difficult to maintain stable groups, because we'll take it out on each other. So the group projects onto the scapegoat their own shadow side, if you will.
Uh-huh.
So we make the scapegoat the embodiment of evil. We blame the scapegoat for whatever. The scapegoat is the cause of contamination in our community.
It's a threat.
Right. The scapegoat is a threat. The scapegoat is malevolent in some way.
Yes.
See? And so we need to eliminate, we need to expel the scapegoat from among us, and in some cases murder the scapegoat. Get rid of it. Purify our group that way. So we are projecting our own, the hostility that we feel toward each other, the resentments, the frustrations, right? That would eventually, as we become locked into greater and greater rivalries fueled by our envy of each other. Yeah, and I would imagine from what you said earlier, it sounds like Harry Potter's group, on the other hand, they have found a way to deal with the problems that they have with each other when they get into envious situations and develop resentments and maybe betray each other in certain ways or whatever, through a process of confession and forgiveness and acceptance and support and so on. It sounds like they have ways to really diffuse and heal those negative, violent forces, which the negative mimesis people, the Voldemirs and these guys, they don't face any of that. They project it outward by finding a scapegoat and blaming everything on the scapegoat, and that's how they maintain their unity.
And bring forth the apocalypse.
Well, that's a whole other topic.
That is the title of your book, though.
Compassion or Apocalypse is the title of my book. Yes, the apocalypse has typically been thought of as the work of a violent God coming to earth to wreak his wrath upon a sinful humanity. And in fact, one wonders why that would even be necessary, given human violence, and especially in our modern world, the technology that is in our hands today, and given what Jacques Ellul referred to as the democratization of evil, meaning that in today's world, the capacity to destroy on mega scales has been democratized. It's no longer just the aristocrats. It's no longer just the powerful or the wealthy who can do that. Anybody on the street almost, can find a way to ignite a bomb, bring down a high-rise, right? Purchase a semi-automatic rifle and take out a whole classroom. I mean, it's unbelievable today.
The first time that you tried to kill Harry, my dad told me it was really scary. We did not know if you ever were gonna come back to us, your people. When the curse reversed, it hurt you real bad. Some jerks were happy, no they were not sad. They said hooray, there's no way he's okay. Yeah, I think he has gone away, far away, there to stay.
find out what Voldemort and volleyball have in common on our next episode. If you would like to find a hard or digital copy of Jim's book, Compassion or Apocalypse, go to Amazon.com and search for James Warren. You can also learn about Jim's work as a professional magician at warrenmagic.com. If you would like to be our next special guest, feature your Wizard Rock song, or give us feedback, send us an email at potterwatchmail@gmail.com. Potterwatch is produced by Tony Caciaccia in Ithaca, New York.